welcome to the fourth edition of the Direct Agents 10-Minute Trends webinar. Today we're joined by a special guest, and we're going to be focusing on the streaming audio industry. If you do have questions, please feel free to chat them to us. We'll try to get to them if we have some time at the end of the 10 minutes. But to kick us off, I'll introduce myself. I'm Brittany Lange, the Director of Client Services at Direct Agents.
I'm Jackson Richards, Director of Strategy with Direct Agents.
And I'm Jennifer Wilder, Director of Performance Marketing at SoundCloud.
Awesome. So as we all know, in the last couple of months, consumer behavior has changed dramatically and drastically around entertainment, and specifically how we're spending our time. We're spending a lot more time at home. We're not commuting. We're not driving. So Jennifer, what kind of impact has this all had on you guys over at SoundCloud?
Yeah, so at SoundCloud, we have two sides of the business. We have the creator side of the business, which is musicians, DJs, and podcasters. And then, of course, we have the listening side. So on the creator side, we've seen a pretty significant uptick in engagement on the platform. Just some really good stats to throw out. We've seen a 50% year-over-year growth in uploads, and also 20% year-over-year growth in monthly active creators. So that tells us that creators are obviously at home right now and wanting to share the music that they're creating and sharing with fans for discovery. We saw these trends start out in the EU, where obviously COVID hit earlier than in the US, and we've seen them continue into the US as the virus has hit here as well.
Yeah, I think, oh, sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead. No, go ahead.
I was going to say, yeah, and just looking across the creator kind of space, we've seen similar trends across other companies as well. I know Patreon is another one we've looked closely at, and they've seen a huge increase in their creators as well. So for those who don't know, Patreon is a way for creators, whether it's YouTubers, musicians, things like that, they're able to create a community and monetize the content that they're creating. They've seen a huge increase, over 50,000 additional new creators, but also a 30+% increase in the number of patrons. So people like you and I who are supporting these communities actively. So it's an increase on the creator side, but also the engagement side from the consumer standpoint.
Yeah. And just to touch on one more thing on the consumer side of things, to Britt's point earlier, we are seeing that listening time has been affected. If you think about your routine, so for example, if you're commuting to the office, that might be a time where you're listening to music, and that's obviously been disrupted. And so we are seeing that listening times have definitely been affected. And, we have heard anecdotally that this is happening also on other music platforms like Spotify, for example.
Yeah, when I see those statistics, to me it seems just temporary, right? We're already starting to see consumer behavior, whether it's like spending across different categories or consumption of different types of media, start to shift as states have started to reopen and people are either starting to get back to the normal, quote unquote, normal life, or there's like a sense of a light at the end of the tunnel where they see that change beginning to happen. So I anticipate as people start moving around a bit more, we're going to see those streaming numbers, those streaming hours and time engaging start to creep back up.
Yeah, I think it's also, people are listening to music probably more in a household of 4 people, for example, maybe one person is listening versus like all 4 people are listening on an individual level. So that also might be why we're seeing a decrease in listening time, because people aren't having as much individual time as they normally would.
Yeah, and I think we're seeing that also on devices, as opposed to listening, on your personal cell phone. You're listening on a home connected device where the whole family or household is listening on an Alexa or a Google Home,
right,
in the kitchen or in the living room. So it's a little bit of a shift to those smart connected devices from just on your phones.
Right.
But Jennifer, since you have kind of this dichotomy of creators are obviously at home, they're out there creating, but maybe the listeners are not listening as much. Have you had to shift your strategy and how you try to connect with those audiences?
Yeah, I mean, for us on the performance side, we're primarily focused on the creator side of the business. We see that as a huge market differentiator for SoundCloud, and that's where I spend the majority of my time. And so, within the performance landscape. But in addition, the brand side of things, we've been really focusing on the creator community, figuring out the ways in which we can help them during this time. So for example, if they're losing revenue from not touring and not performing, how can we help them? So for example, we have partnered with Twitch. We know that a lot of creators are on Twitch. It's another monetization platform. So we have built that platform or built that partnership in order for our creators to have another way to monetize their art. We also have developed a lot of content around helping creators grow their career during this time. So for example, bringing in industry leaders to help them figure out how to get discovered. And then we also built a donate button so fans can actually directly support the creators that they're listening to, which has been a really huge success and been obviously a wildly popular feature since we launched it. And lastly, on the more conventional side of things, we did launch a 50% sale in March.
Yeah, I think the partnership with Twitch is really cool and interesting, and I think indicative of the sorts of integrations we're going to be seeing going forward. I think we're not going to see as much necessarily like single platform creators. I think people have shown they want to engage with their favorite musicians or YouTubers in different platforms and in different environments, depending on where they are, or what their preferred viewing habit is at different points in their day or different days of the week and things like that. So I think that's indicative of the sort of like flexibility we might be seeing going forward.
Yeah, and I think in general, one thing that we're really focused on this year with COVID and just in general is really building that creator to fan relationship, and all of this kind of ladders up to that goal.
Yeah, I think we'll start seeing a lot more brands shift dollars away from, the Googles and the Facebooks of the world to these platforms that have maybe largely been ignored on the advertising side, like TikTok and Twitch, that are getting a lot more play now that that's where people are spending a lot more time.
Right. Yeah. I mean, TikTok has always been of interest to us. We're figuring out right now how we can really get into that platform on the performance side. But I think it's interesting to see, whereas TikTok was for a long time, or, since its inception, really popular with Gen Z, it's now popular with, our parents or even our grandparents. And that's a way for older people, in fact, to connect with younger generations during this time, which is really interesting.
Yeah, and Brittany, to your point, I think when ad dollars get tight, like they did at the beginning of the COVID-19 pandemic, we see advertisers kind of double down on what works best for them, which is in many cases it is Facebook and Google. What we've seen is that translates into declines in CPMs across all types of media, and eventually brands are just going to follow their customers where they are. So we do expect to see, in the coming months, and we're starting to see it, but I think accelerating this trend of brands going back out and partnering with other platforms, because we know that's where their audience is already spending time, whether that's TikTok or whether it's connected TV, things like that.
Right.
I want to squeeze one more question in, speaking of connected TV, because I know you guys both have some backgrounds in that space, and just get your take on trends that you're seeing in streaming, not just audio, but video as well.
Yeah,
sure,
I was just going to say, we're not doing any connected TV actually for SoundCloud.
Yeah, I think, one of the reasons probably that some of the streaming from audio is down is because people are at home, they're in front, they're on their sofa, they're in front of their TVs. We've seen increase in viewership in both advertising-based OTTs as well as subscriptions. For a lot of subscription-based OTTs, they've seen a huge increase in the number of subscriptions over the last few months as people have been spending more time at home. My prediction is that, as people are able to start going and spending more time outside and socializing with other people, they're not necessarily going to want to keep 8 or 10 different subscriptions on hand. And so I think it's important for these streaming services to kind of diversify the ways that they are engaging with their customers, not rely solely on subscriptions or advertising, and branching out into things like merchandising or partnerships, other sorts of community building efforts, because there has been a huge bump in like streaming subscriptions over the last few months, but it's hard to imagine that's going to be sustainable at the same level it has been.
Yeah. So that's actually 10 minutes. If you do have any questions, please reach out to us at marketing@directagents, and we'll be happy to speak with you. And as always, you can catch us next Wednesday at 1:30 Eastern for round 5 of 10-minute trends.